Continue now at the top of Daf Chavav Amud Aleph and Meseches Pesachim. This is Pesachim Daf 26a. The Gemara here is discussing a machlokas between Abaye and Rava. Let's say you have a situation of Hana Shabolo Lodem Bal Korcho. You have something which is Aser Bahana, and against the person's will, he finds himself deriving benefit from something that's Aser Bahana. So Abaye said it's Mutter, Rava said it's Aser. The Gemara now is in the second version explaining what exactly the machlokas is between Abaye and Rava. The Gemara explains the case over here is it's lo efsher. It's impossible to avoid the hana, but he's having kavana, he is having intention to derive the benefit. And the Gemara says, according to Rabbi Shimon cares about kavana, because Rabbi Shimon holds a davar shein miskavin in general is mutter, so he cares about kavana. Since he cares about kavana, so in this case where you're having kavana, everybody agrees it's a problem, everybody agrees it's aser. The only machlokas is within Rabbi Yehuda. That's the machlokas Abaye and Rava. So again, Abaye says it's mutter according to Rabbi Yehuda. Why is it mutter according to Rabbi Yehuda? Because again, Rabbi Yehuda does not care about kavana. Since Rabbi Yehuda doesn't care about kavana, the fact that you're having kavana over here doesn't matter. V'Rava amar lach, and Rava will say to you, Ad kan lo kamer Rabbi Yehuda she'ein miskavin ke miskavin ela l'chumra. When Rabbi Yehuda said that he doesn't care about kavana, he was really just saying a chumra. He was saying if you have a davar she'eino miskavin, then it's aser in general. Avol miskavin kishain miskavin lakula lo, but he's not going to apply that as a leniency. He's not going to say over here, well, in this case, when you're having kavana, I also don't care that you're having kavana, and it's not going to be a problem. No, according to Rava says even according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's going to be a problem, and Rava says even according to Rabbi Yehuda, we have to be machmir. So the Gemara now says, Amar Abaye says, Mino amino lo. How can I prove to you my position that in this case where it's bal karcho, it's going to be mutter? The Tanya we learned in a brayso. Amru Allah val Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. They said about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Shaya Yoshev b'tzilo shel heichol. He would sit in the shade of the heichol of the Beis Hamikdash. V'doresh kol hayom kulo, and that's where he would give his public drasha. So the Gemara says, Abaye says, v'hacha, but over here, the lo efshar, it's impossible to avoid it. He has to have a large area on the holiday. This we're talking about in the Chag in order to darshan in public. Umechaven, and he is having kavana to benefit from the shade of the Beis Hamikdash. V'shari, and apparently it's permitted. So you see, this is exactly the case. He's having kavana to derive benefit, and it is permitted. That is exactly what Abaye said. Abaye within Rabbi Yehuda said that if it's lo efshar mechaven, it's shari. But what's Rava going to say? The Rava says shani heichol. It's different. The heichol de l'socho asoi. It's really made for the inside. So getting hana from the outside, sitting outside of the heichel and getting the benefit from the shade is not going to count anyway, and that's why it was mutter. Amar Rava says, Meno amino lo, where can I prove it to you that it's actually aser? The Tanan we learned in the Mishnah, Lulin hayu psuchin balias beis kodshei hakadoshim. There were skylights in the top of the kodshei hakadoshim. Shavahen mishalshalin es ha'umnin betevos. They would lower the workers into the kodshei hakadoshim in boxes. Kedei shelo yizonu einayim mibeis kodshei hakadoshim. That way they wouldn't benefit from seeing the Kodshei Kadashim, they wouldn't get this hana. So Rava says, V'hacha, but over here, the lo efshar, it's impossible to avoid it. You need to have them go in there to fix whatever needs to get fixed in the Kodesh Kadashim. V'kamechavin, and they're having intention to get the benefit. V'aser, and apparently it's aser, and we say that they have to be put in this box, we have to try to avoid it, so it seems to be a proof like Rava. So the Gemara says, V'tizbar, is that really logical? V'yomer Rav Shimon ben Pazi, Yomer Rav Yoshua ben Levi, Mishum bar Kapara. Didn't Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi say in the name of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, in the name of Bar Kapara, Kol umare v'reach, when it comes to either sound, let's say you're hearing the instruments in the Beis Hamikdash, mare, you're looking at the beautiful things in the Beis Hamikdash, or reach, let's say you're benefiting from the smell of the ketores, ein bohen mishum me'ila, it's not a problem of me'ila, there is no problem of me'ila, there's no real substance. Rashi over here says, ein bohen mishum me'ila doraisa, there's no problem of me'ila on a doraisa level, hoel ve'ein bohem mamish, because these things, kol v'reach, and mara, they don't have any substance. V'kevan to mi doraisa sharu, since they're permitted on a doraisa level, kilo efshar kagon hach, in a situation where it's impossible otherwise, like over here, amaya trechinu rabbanon, why would the rabbanon bother the guy? Elamayla bi'al mahavai, obviously this is just an extra chumrah they made over here. That's what he continues. He says, ein b'hem mishum me'ila, elamayla asu b'veis kodshei hakadoshim. This was just an extra chumrah they make in the Kodesh Kadashim, and so therefore it's not a proof to Rava. It's not that we're lowering them in these boxes because we're trying to avoid some Isser. There is no Isser. And there wouldn't be an Isser anyway because it's nothing more than Mara, and it's just a Maila, it's just an extra chumrah that we make in the Kodesh Kadashim. Ika Diamri, there's some have another version of this. Amar Rava says, Meno Aminullah, where can I prove to you again that it's Aser? The Tanya we learned in a Brisa, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Mishum bar Kapara. Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi says in the name of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, in the name of bar Kapara, Kol Umare Vareach Ein Bohen Mishum Meila. Again, it says sound. You see something, you smell something. It's not a problem of Meila. It's not a problem of benefiting personally from the items that are Kodesh. So here he makes a diak. Meila hu deleka. So there's no Meila. Ha'isura ika, but there is a general prohibition. So that's a proof that there is a prohibition. My lav la'osana omdim bifnim delo efshar. Aren't we talking about those who are inside the Beis HaMikdash where it's impossible to avoid? V'kam mechaven, and they're having kavanah to benefit. V'yasar, and apparently there is an isser, so it's a proof to Rava. So the Gemara says, lo no la'osana omdim bachutz. Over here we're talking about where it's those people on the outside. And Rashi over here explains first, he says, omdim bifnim, those on the inside, l'shamish, to serve in the Beis HaMikdash. Delo efshar milamot sham, it's impossible to avoid standing there. The Asr Lulios Miskavnim, and apparently it's also to have Kavona. So the Gemara answers, no, Los and Omdim Bachutz Kamer Ein Meila. We're talking about the people who are outside the Beis HaMikdash, where we say there's no Meila Ha'isura Ika, but there is an Isser in that case. Avalom de Bifnim, but where you're standing on the inside, Afilu Isura Laka, there would not even be an Isser because it's impossible to avoid. In a situation, we're talking about in a situation where it's possible to avoid, that's where we make this diuk, that there's an Isser, so it's no proof to Rava. Gemara now continues, Gufa, returning to the statement we made above. Amar Rav Shimon ben Pazi, Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Mishum bar Kapara. Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi says in the name of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, in the name of bar Kapara, Kol Amar v'Reach ein v'hem Mishum Meila. Again, Kol Mar and Reach. If you have sound, you have something that you see, something that you smell, is not a problem of Meila. So the Gemara asks, V'Reach ein bo Mishum Meila. Is it really true that when it comes to smell, there's no problem of Meila? V'Atanya, but we learned in a Brisa, Hamefate Mesad Ketoras. Let's say somebody makes a replicate of the Ketoras, of the incense that's burned in the Beis HaMikdash. Now there's a prohibition, it's an Isser D'Oraisa, to make a replica of the Ketoras. But let's say the person does it either lehislamid, but either he's doing it to learn how to make the Ketoras, or he's making it, but he is going to give it over to the tzibur that they can use it in the Beis HaMikdash. So in those cases, pater, that's not a problem. However, but if he does it in order to smell it, he wants to benefit from the smell, chayiv, then that's a problem of creating this Ketoras. Rashi over here says, he's making a Ketoras that's not supposed to belong to the tzibur. If he's doing it to learn, or he's going to give it after he makes it, he's going to give it to the tzibur, pater mikares, then he's pater from getting kares. But if he wants to keep it for himself to smell, and he makes it the same way that it's made in the Beis HaMikdash, chayiv kares is chayiv kares tichsiv, because it says, it says if he makes it to smell it, then he's going to get kares. So that's in terms of the issur of replicating the ketoras. And then it says but somebody who does smell it, pater, he's pater. That's not a problem of replicating, meaning a person smelling the actual ketoras of the Beis HaMikdash. Elo shemal, but that is meila. Rashi over here says b'ketoras shel tzibur. In the real ketoras of the tzibur, pater mikares, there's no kares, so mechatas, no chatas, the lo chayv v'torah lemefatem lo riach. The isser is to create the replica in order to smell. However, ela shemal, but there is meila. Shenanim min hakodesh umevi asha meilos. He's considered getting benefit from hekdesh, and he has to bring in asha meilos. So here you see a direct contradiction that you can have meila when it comes to reach. This brisa seems to imply you could have meila. And again, we said before, from Rav Shimon ben Pazi, in the name of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, in the name of Bar Kapara, that reach, there is no meila. So what's going on over here? So the Gemara says, Elo Amar Rav Papa, rather Rav Papa says, Kol Umara ein bohen mishum meila, lefi shein ben mamish. When it comes to sound, when it comes to sight, there's no meila because there's no substance. However, smell does have substance. So when is there a situation when reach would not have meila? V'reach la'achar shetala tamruso. But reach, after the smoke goes up, ein bo mishum meila, then there actually is no meila for a different reason, nothing to do with substance. Hoil v'nasis mitzvaso, because the mitzvah was already done. Rashi over here says, Kol umara ein bohem mamish, Kol and mara have no substance, upater liolam, you're always pater. V'reach yesh bo mamish b'samimonim, but smell does have substance because you're using certain things to create the mixture. Lefika chayiv, that's why you're chayiv. U'teka'amar Rabbi Yoshua pater. Now when we said before you're pater, la'achar shatala timraso b'mikdash kamer, that's after you've already let it go up in the Beis HaMikdash, the mishum the nasus mitzvaso, meaning after you've done the mitzvah of the ketoras properly. V'ein tzorech gavoa, there's nothing more needed for Tzorech Gavoa, for the Beis HaMikdash, so Ba Yatsa Michlal Kodshei Hashem, then it's no longer Kodshei Hashem, and that's why it's going to not be a problem. The Brisa where we're saying in the Brisa you are doing Milah, that's when you're doing it in your house. You're not doing it after the mitzvah was already done. So that's the distinction between what it says in the Brisa and what we just quoted above. But the Gemara still continues to ask, do you mean to say that any time a mitzvah was completed, there's no problem of Me'ilah? And what about Trumas Hadeshen? The Nasis mitzvah, by Trumas Hadeshen, the mitzvah is completed. V'yesh ba mishum Me'ilah, and there's a problem of Me'ilah. And Rashi over here says, Trumas Hadeshen b'chol yom hayanotel mole machta b'noz neitzel mizbeach. Every day you would take some of the ashes, you would take a scoop of the ashes, and you would put it by the mizbeach. V'nivlas b'makom, it would get absorbed in that area. K'nechsiv v'herim es hadeshen v'gomer. That's what it says in the pasuk. You have to lift up the deshen. V'asura b'hano. Now that deshen is asur b'hano mo'alin bon. It's considered there's me'ilah. K'nechsiv v'samo etzel mizbeach. It says you have to place it by the mizbeach. Al mutuna geniza. You see, you have to store it away. And the Gemara continues. D'chsiv, as it says in the pasuk, v'samo etzel mizbeach. You have to place these ashes of the trumas hadeshen by the mizbeach. Shelo yefazer, you're not allowed to scatter them. V'samo, and what does it mean v'samo? Shelo yena, you're not allowed to get benefit. So apparently there is a problem of me'ilah by trumas hadeshen, even though it is something where the mitzvah's already been done. So to that, the Gemara says, Mishum dahavi trumas hadeshen uvigdei kahuna shnei ksuvin haboin ke'echad. Trumas Hadeshen is not the only situation where there's going to be Me'ilah after the mitzvah is done. Also, Bigdei Kahuna, there's Me'ilah, and that's called Shnei Ksuvin Haboin Ke'echad. If you have two psukim where it says a halacha, the rule is V'chol Shnei Ksuvin Haboin Ke'echad Ein Malamdin. If you have two places where it says one halacha, you can't learn out a halacha from there. The reason is as follows. Because if it would only be by Trumas Hadeshen, we would apply what we call a Mamotzinu. Whatever the halacha is by Trumas Hadeshen, that applies everywhere else. But if the Torah goes and says it in an additional place, let's say over here by Bigdei Kahuna, the same halacha, why are you saying it again? You're saying it again to say that only in these two cases is there a problem of Me'ilah, but in other cases where the mitzvah is done, there's no problem of Me'ilah. So it's basically a situation of what we call Shnei Ksuvin Haboin Ke'echad, two psukim that have the same halacha, Ein Melamdin. They can't teach that halacha in other places. Trumas Hadeshen Hadi Amron. Trumas Hadeshen we just said. Again, by Trumas Hadeshen, even though the mitzvah was done, there's a problem of Me'ilah. And then Bigdei Kahuna D'chsiv. What about Bigdei Kahuna? Because the pasuk says V'hinicham Sham, and he has to place it over there. What this is talking about is the Kohen Gadol, when he does a service on Yom Kippur, he does it in the 4 Bigdei Lavan. He does it in the 4 begadim, and then the halach is he has to place them down. And what does that teach us? Malamed shetu'unin geniza. That shows he has to store it away. It can never be used again. So it's basically the same halacha. You're not allowed to use those begadim again that were used by the Kohen Gadol in Yom Kippur. Even though a Kohen Hedyot serves in those 4 begadim all year, he can't use those particular begadim. So again, here you see an example where even though the mitzvah was done, there's a problem to use it. The Gemara says, Hanichol Rabbanan. Now that works according to the Rabbanan. The Amri Melamed Shetun and Geniza. They're the ones that say you have to store away the begadim of the Kohen Gadol that he uses on Yom Kippur. So that all makes sense. Elul Rabbi Dosa the Poligalayo. But what about according to Rabbi Dosa? He argues on the Rabbanan. The Yamar, and he says, Avo Ru'uyin Hein LaKohen Hedyot. He actually says the Kohen Hedyot's allowed to use those begadim, even though the Kohen Gadol used it on Yom Kippur, they can be used again. Umay v'hinicham sham. What does it mean that the Kohen Gadol has to place down the begadim? Shelo yishtamish bohem b'yom kippurim acher. It simply means those same begadim should not be used on a different Yom Kippur, but they can be used in general. So Ma'ikol Meimar. So now Bigdei Kahuna, according to Rabbi Dos, is not a good example because the mitzvah is done and you actually are allowed to continue to use the Bigdei Kahuna. So the Gemara finds another example. Mishum David Trumas Hadeshen v'Eglo Arufa Shnei Chsuvin Haboin Ke'echad. Because of the Trumas Hadeshen and Eglo Arufa are going to be 2 psukim that teach the same thing. V'chol Shnei Chsuvin Haboin Ke'echad Ein Melamdin. And whenever you have a situation of Shnei Chsuvin Haboin Ke'echad, they cannot teach. And Rashi over here explains, Egla Arufa Chsiv Sham. It says over there by Egla Arufa, Temashma Sham Tehei Kavurasa. When you do the Egla Arufa, you have to bury it. The case over there is, again, you have a dead body, so there's a procedure called Egla Arufa where you find out which city the dead body is closest to, and then they bring this calf and they break its neck in that area. And the halach is Sham Tehei Kavurasa. You have to bury it over there. The mitzvah is done, but you're not allowed to derive any kind of benefit. So again, you have this example where the mitzvah is done, but you're not allowed to benefit. Gemara says, Hanichol Aman Damar Ein Melamdin. That's very nice, according to the one who says, Shnei Chsuvin Haboin Ke'echad cannot teach. Elol Aman Damar Melamdin Ma'ikol Meimer. There's another man Damar who says that Shnei Chsuvin Haboin Ke'echad could teach us in another place. So what are you going to say? Again, why do we have this general rule that you're not allowed to get, that you are allowed to get benefit once the mitzvah is done. Here we see two examples where you're not allowed to get benefit when the mitzvah is done. So the Gemara says, even according to that man, there are actually exclusions, two exclusions that are written in the pasuk. There's an extra word that says only over here you're not allowed to get benefit, but in other cases when the mitzvah is done you are. Ksiv visamo, it says visamo by Trumas Hadeshin, uchsiv ha'arufa, and it says ha'arufa, and those psukim exclude other cases. Gemara tries to bring a proof. Tashma, come in here. And this proof is going to be regarding the machlokas Abai and Rava. Let's say you have a situation where it's impossible to avoid a benefit, but you're having kavana to get that benefit. Case over here is as follows. Hichnisa l'ravka. Let's say you're bringing the cow into the cow pen. Now this cow, you want to use it either for egla arufa. The rule is to use a cow for egla arufa can never work. Or you want to use it for para aduma, the same idea. It has to be a cow that can never work. So you're going to now, you enter it into the pen. Vidasha, it ends up threshing. Is that considered work that passes it? So the Brisa says, ksheira, it's kosher, it's not a problem because you're not having intention. But b'shvil shatinok v'tidosh, let's say you do it because you want it to nurse and you want it to thresh, psula, then your intention makes it a problem. So the Gemara says, v'hacha, but over here, to lo after it's impossible to avoid, v'kam echavin, and apparently he's having kavon in the second case, in the latter case of the Brisa, the katani psul, and it says it's a problem. So again, you see like Rava says, that in a situation where it's impossible to avoid and you're having kavana, it's going to be asur. So the Gemara answers, Shani Hasam, it's different over there. Dechsiv asher lo uvad ba. It says that no work was done, mikol makom, in any fashion. So that's a special pasuk that says that it's puzzle even in this situation where it was impossible to avoid. The Gemara says if there's a special pasuk, if so, afilu reishanami, even in the first part of the Brisa, where you were not having kavana, it should be a problem because the pasuk says any kind of work is a problem. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chavav Amud Beis.